changed my mind. Every crypto offering, every crypto product should start off with a custodial offering rather than going straight to non-custodial. And you should actually always have login with Google. If you're building something right now and you want to be successful on Solana, I would say steal the Web2 growth playbooks. We are so back. The reports of Solana's death have been greatly exaggerated. The enterprise adoption is crazy. And that's probably the biggest news in all of crypto, let alone Solana. Solana is good for mass retail usage today, as we've seen with Shopify.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Next Billion podcast, where we're talking to the builders, the entrepreneurs, the people making it happen. And this dude actually makes a lot of things happen. In fact, he's the overlord of all things Superteam. We're talking again, I think, to Kash. Kash, how are you?
I'm doing very well, George. Thanks for having me back on.
Look, it's a pleasure to have you as always. We want to talk about all the cool things happening in Solana recently, maybe more of like a newsy type update kind of thing. By the way, if you haven't already, people should go and check out the Superteam monthly calls. They are like the best thing in any crypto ecosystem. And Kash has his charisma stat maxed out, and it's a great fun for all. So definitely go and check that out. We'll probably put links in the Twitter to the last one. But if you want like a more in-depth, longer form discussion of these things, that's the place to go. But yeah, look, I mean, a lot of different things happening recently in Solana land. In terms of flying around in different worlds, I think we're both in Airbnbs right now for various reasons and lots of different things happening. We can talk about what's going on in Solana in India. You were recently in Germany at a hackathon. We've got enterprise adoption, all these sorts of things happening. So where should we begin? What's the top of your mind?
I think the top of my mind is that we are so back, man. The reports of Solana's death have been greatly exaggerated, is where I would probably start with. In particular, the enterprise adoption is crazy. You want to start off with Visa, because I think that's probably the biggest news in all of crypto, let alone Solana, in the last few weeks.
Well, yeah, so what's the deal with Visa, right? We had, I forget the guy's name, but he's in charge of blockchain or something at Visa, and he came out with a really good post about like why Solana as well, which was a good read. So Visa's doing something with Solana. What are they doing? What's going on there?
So I think a lot of people might not be familiar with how Visa actually works, right? So when you go to a coffee shop and you swipe your credit card, it feels instant to you, right? And that's the experience that they try to deliver. But in reality, it's not instant on the back end. What actually has to happen is that your bank that's taking your funds has to talk to the merchant bank, which is oftentimes called the acquirer. And the thing about banks is that they have banking hours, they don't work on the weekends, and there's all sorts of other kind of lags and delays built into the system. It's pretty costly and expensive to do as well, and you have a bunch of other kind of problems that arise. So for a little while now, Visa has been exploring the concept of using stablecoins for kind of instantaneous settlement. So it doesn't just feel instant, it actually is instant. And as a result, they needed a chain that would be fast enough and could offer finality in basically less than a second, and Solana is the right one for that. So they're working with Circle right now. So instead of having to talk from your merchant bank to the acquirer bank, they can just use USDC stablecoins to make that transaction happen instantaneously, and then figure out all the off-ramping and so on after that. I think they're working with two of the biggest like kind of acquirer banks in the world, WorldPay and Nuvi, I think is how you pronounce the other one. And I think it's super exciting, probably for three reasons. The first one, great for crypto, just in general, right? Moving beyond just the speculative use case into real value for real people in the real world, which I think is great. As much as I do love a good crypto casino, I think it's nicer over here. The second thing is that it's a great exemplification of what the Solana tech can actually do that normal Web2 tech cannot do, right? We talk a lot about crypto building a new financial system. This is what that new financial system looks like, right? Visa settles $11 trillion a year in value. So bringing a significant portion of that over to stablecoins would dramatically increase the use of stablecoins and show the value there. And then third, I think it's really a great indicator to the market that, hey, no one knows payments better than Visa in this world. And with all of their knowledge and all of their resources, rather than building their own system or leveraging Ethereum or another network, they've come to Solana. So I think that sends a really powerful signal to the market in terms of how good the underlying tech is.
And let's be clear, like you're not going to be logging on to visa.com tomorrow and see a pay with Solana message or something like that. Like this is something that's clearly focused on really the back-end systems, right? And maybe that's an important distinction as well, that I saw a tweet from Anatoly where he was saying, basically, if you can make these enterprise businesses be able to realize that they should really just run a lot of their back-end infrastructure on Solana because it's literally cheaper and faster and can actually give them some real benefit, then they will, right? So it doesn't have to be user-facing all the time. We often think of dApps and using our wallets every day and all this kind of stuff, but actually there is a strong use case for using Solana, or at least some of the payment infrastructure for that as a back end to sort of a core business system like Visa.
Absolutely. I think there's a weird thing that happens because of the tokens and the speculation around crypto, where every layer one feels like it should be a consumer application and the marketing is kind of in that direction and so on. But I think you're exactly right. These are fundamentally more similar to like, cloud infrastructure providers than they are to, any application that you might use on a day-to-day basis. So that is where all the growth is going to come from, and that's where a lot of the value is. And Visa wasn't alone in kind of making that assessment over the past few weeks. That was my attempt at a segue. I don't know if that was very good, but...
Absolutely. Look, I think I want to get into some of the other exciting things happening in Solana world as well. We've got the enterprise adoption from people like Visa. We'll see how that goes. But then we've got all of these hackathons. And by the way, a lot of these enterprises sometimes sponsor various hackathons in Solana going on. Like I saw AWS is offering the top prize in Hyperdrive and some of that kind of stuff, which I believe was announced recently. But so what's the deal with some of these hackathons, right? You were recently in Berlin, now you're in Bangalore. There's all sorts of different stuff happening in terms of hacker houses, as well as online only hackathons for those that can't actually physically be present in these different places of the world. So yeah, tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, I would say that if you are a builder in crypto or an aspiring builder, September is like absolutely the month to get off of your seat and get into the arena, as Chamath would say. I think
that was a nice segue.
Yeah, so Hyperdrive just kicked off, which is the global hackathon. I would say that of Solana's kind of many innovations, one of the most interesting ones, or the biggest differentiators versus other chains, are using these global hackathons as the jumping off point for major projects. So there's $1 million in prizes and seed funding that's going to come out of this hackathon, which is pretty crazy. I think in the past, hackathon winners have raised something like $600 million collectively. So it's really where the best Solana projects kind of come to the fore. So that's going on all throughout September. And to help kind of drum up some interest and get people excited and make teams happen and so forth, there have been these hacker houses all over the world as well. So indeed, there was one in Berlin. Big shout out to Superteam Germany and the Foundation Events team for putting that one together, which was crazy. It was, I think it was like 300 or 400 devs every day coming together, talking about Solana, talking about what to build, and figuring out kind of new use cases for Solana tech, which is pretty exciting. And uniquely, that one, I think it had the feel of like a reunion, like a high school reunion or something. It was the first kind of like major IRL event in Europe this year. Obviously, Breakpoint's happening later. So you got to see a lot of like really sophisticated builders who have, been through the good and through the bad coming together and just kind of, revitalizing that community.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's where a lot of these teams start. I think pretty much most of the DeFi protocols that I can think of on Solana at some stage probably started at a hackathon. Like the numbers are crazy. It's like 60% or something like that. So these things do work. And do you think that's a viable strategy as well for Solana in general, that they can focus a lot on these builders and these workshops and these hackathons and these different things? Like, is that how we actually grow value in the chain?
I think so. I'm far from an expert in like how to actually drive value to Sol, the token, but certainly in terms of like onboarding builders, having like a discrete period where there's a lot of attention, a lot of focus, and a lot of resources to support those builders, I think is going to be critical going forward. Last time I checked, Hyperdrive already has like 2,500 registrations, which is quite a lot of people who are interested in building something on Solana. In India alone, there's more than 1,000 people who have signed up to participate in the hackathon, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, long term, I think that this will continue to be an important piece. But the fun thing about Solana as well, I think, is that you're seeing more and more of the community step up to help run some of these types of events. Obviously, like you guys at Step with the Crossroads conference back in February, March?
April. Almost.
April, yeah. It was in the spring, I know. So obviously you guys with like the Crossroads conference back in April, we're kind of like leading the way on community kind of building things outside of the foundation. We just finished up the Only Possible on Solana hackathon as well, led by Lamport DAO, another just community organization pushing it. So I think the future is probably lots of hackathons, some of which are these big global ones by foundation, and then some of which are these smaller, maybe regionalized hackathons or with specific use cases.
Yeah, well, I think it probably makes sense. What are the alternatives, right? Let's say you're an L1 and you're in the position of someone like Solana, and there's a lot of L1s out there, and you'll want to sort of drive value to your product. Like, how are you going to do that? You can go down the route of being like, hey, Nike, like, do you want to mint an NFT or something like that? Or hey, McDonald's, like, do you want to put an NFT at the bottom of a Big Mac? You could go down that path, but I don't really think that that's something that's ever proven to be generating value. I mean, other blockchains have tried, right? Whereas I think Solana does a really good job of these sort of grassroots things that are focused on builders and devs and this kind of stuff. I guess the change perhaps that I'm starting to see is more of a focus on direct users, right? It's like, cool, you can go to all of these conferences and build these different things. And if you're a developer or engineer, that's great. But what about like getting the products in the hands of people? Like, do you have any thoughts there on the best ways to do that, or just any thoughts in general in terms of growth that you guys at Superteam are looking at?
Yeah, I would say it's been interesting to see how different ecosystems have taken different approaches of who are their users, right? So like if you look at Ethereum, a lot of the things that are being done in that ecosystem are for the whales who predominantly use Ethereum, right? I think something like the average stablecoin transfers like $60,000 on like the average, right? So it's a very specific segment of people who are able to participate there. You look at like Polygon or some other ecosystems where they chase these kind of big, flashy Web2 partnerships with Starbucks or Reddit or whoever else. And I think Solana has really taken the decision to focus on the builders who will figure out the new use cases. So seeing devs as like the primary constituency for the blockchain, I think both makes good sense and is good business, because that's where these use cases get revealed. But that leads into what you're talking about in terms of like getting more users as well. Part of it, I think, is just to hope that, hey, as we have more interesting applications from all around the world, not just any particular market, you'll find more users attracted in those local markets to those local offerings that solve local problems. And then also really focusing on IRL kind of meetups, as you guys are doing through Solana All-Stars, I think is like a critical path to it, to help kind of make people feel that, crypto is not just about scams. It's not just about gambling, that there's, real value that it can drive for you. So finding that user growth, I think, is largely about creating new ways for people to interact with crypto, which is what these hackathons do, and then building up more faith and credibility in the ecosystem as like, hey, this is a legitimate thing that can actually help your life. What kind of growth are you guys seeing? And I know you've been super active in Turkey and in Nigeria in particular, and been seeing like great meetup success in terms of driving some user growth, right?
Yeah. Look, I think these IRL events are really important to get the brand and get these things in front of actual users. So yeah, look, we're really excited about what's going on with All Stars. I know Superteam are doing things all over the world. In fact, Superteam, you have this Superteam World Tour. You've got all sorts of, you mentioned before that there was Superteam Germany involved in the recent Berlin stuff. There's Superteam India now, which, all the different cool stuff happening over there in Bangalore right now. But there's Superteams all over the place. So what's your thought on sort of, are you seeing different regional differences between these places? Like, is a place like India focused on users and a place like Berlin focused on developers? Or is it the opposite or the reverse? Or am I completely wrong? Like, what's really going on? Can you make some sort of broad generalizations about the growth that you're seeing in different regions?
Yeah, so to kind of grossly oversimplify, I think that the different markets have different growth depending on kind of what the needs of that market are and what the talent pool of that market is. So for India, as an example, which is where Superteam started, tons of students. There's a lot of young people with a lot of energy who are willing to try out kind of cutting edge technologies. And so a lot of our efforts in this market are how do we onboard those university students from not just the best universities, the IITs, but also other universities all across the country and build up this kind of grassroots young people cohort who will not only build things, but also potentially use them. However, like from a use case perspective, India actually has excellent payment rails already. There's this thing called UPI, and they have a great kind of national ID system and all these other kind of things that are useful for blockchains in other countries, but don't make as much sense here. So the growth that we see for projects in India is not necessarily around payments. It'll be more around, let's say, infrastructure, because there's a lot of infrastructure devs here. It'll be around gaming. It'll be around social and things of that nature. If you contrast that with a market like Germany, which has, on average, I would say, not only older builders, but more experienced entrepreneurs who are exploring crypto. So our focus is partnering more with like accelerators over there, with other kind of VC funds to identify top talent and so forth. And then we're seeing like surprising usage in other countries, like where I didn't really think there would be a ton of interest at. So like Italy, not known for its crypto community, at least I did not know it for its crypto community. We had some local Superteam captains host a meetup there that got 120 people to come out inside of 2 weeks to learn about Solana and see why it was pretty great. And that just kind of happened organically, basically out of nowhere. So the World Tour has been pretty interesting to see what markets have the most kind of thirst for it. We're seeing a lot of interest in Croatia, which has been interesting, in Serbia, countries that you don't always associate with kind of, Solana or crypto in general. And so that's been really exciting. The one thing that I think we really want to focus on and get more users in is in LATAM, because I think that's where the crypto use case is probably the most pressing and like most already adopted in countries like Argentina and others. So I think that we still have some more work to do, but the day is young.
So what do you think is the way for any budding entrepreneurs out there to be looking to grow their products in the Solana ecosystem? So we've got all of these different meetups, we've got these conferences. We've got these different online hackathons, all this kind of stuff. If you're a builder, an entrepreneur out there, or just someone with an idea, what's the pathway that you think makes the most sense? Especially given it's a bear market, there's not VCs throwing money every 10 seconds everywhere. Are there any sort of clues that you think people should follow if they're looking to kickstart a new project and get it off the ground?
Yeah, so obviously a biased answer here, but join your local super team. If you have a super team, they're built there to support you, to help get you not just kind of feedback, but help you find partners, to help you get connections to capital, whether it's through grants or through actual VC funding or anything else. So that's the simplest kind of cheat code. But more broadly, maybe there's not a super team in your market. I would encourage a lot of the builders to focus more on product than on the tech. And I think you're seeing this kind of as a wave in Solana right now in general, that unlike some other ecosystems, which shall not be named, where the tech is always kind of 6 months or a year away, and we're almost there. Solana is good for mass retail usage today, or for enterprise usage today, as we've seen with Shopify and these others, right? So focusing more on building apps that have some kind of product market fit and thinking from a product perspective is really useful. There was a strain early in crypto, which kind of saw crypto as diametrically opposed to everything that Web 2 represented, right? And I think that's useful early on, and now it's starting to become a hindrance, where people are focusing too much on decentralization or too much on kind of crypto native arguments, rather than trying to make kind of product arguments that will work with large bases of users. So if you're building something right now and you want to be successful on Solana, I would say steal the Web2 growth playbooks, right? Read Lenny's writing, figure out what has worked elsewhere for previous companies. It'll probably work here because now we are going after users. So talking to your users is very important. Thinking through product design is very important. UX, UI becomes very important, and so on. And I think a lot of teams are underinvesting in those right now. Go-to-market being another major one.
Yeah, look, I think daily active users should be a metric for anyone building important products, right? And I think that gets forgotten about, and people start talking about nodes and this and that and bits and bytes, and it's bro, literally before you get the bits and bytes right, you should get the users right and people actually using the product. But also, I think I'm curious your thoughts on this, there is a diminishing returns in terms of optimizing entirely for decentralization. Decentralization's great, but let's say, okay, the theoretical thing of, okay, is 1,000 nodes enough? What about 100,000? What about 1 billion? Is 1 billion better than 900,000? Where is the diminishing, and how much better is it? Is it better by 50% or something like that? So are you gonna spend all your time optimizing for these things, which you do see elsewhere in different ecosystems, and people spend so much time and effort and energy talking about this kind of stuff. When I think one of the cool things that Solana at least is trying to get right with all of these hackathons and different stuff is people building products. And products are the things which people use. You can talk about bits and bytes, yes, that's very important. Leave that to Anatoly and the team to do, and as far as I'm concerned, but just focus on getting the product right. I think any builders out there would be wise to do that.
I think so. All of life is a status game, of course. And it's interesting to look at the different ecosystems and see what gets you more status within those, right? So in the Ethereum and adjacent ecosystems there, it's oftentimes filled with a lot more people who are academically minded or are hardcore crypto libertarian believers, in which case talking about decentralization gets you status points. One of the things I really like about being in the Solana ecosystem is you'll get a few points, but that's not going to be enough to take it over the edge. It's if you don't have users, if you're not creating real value, if there's not on-chain transactions happening, then you're not going to be, cool in the Solana ecosystem. And I think that's really healthy and really important, quite honestly. I have a hot take, George. I want to see what you think of this.
Let's go.
So my hot take is that, is it the case, or how about I'll say it like this, change my mind. Every crypto offering, every crypto product should start off with a custodial offering rather than going straight to non-custodial. And you should actually always have login with Google. And you should always create wallets on behalf of your users. And they should be able to take it out, but start there rather than starting with custodial or non-custodial wallet solutions. What do you think of that idea?
I think that's super interesting. I guess it depends on the product. Actually, I think probably the best thing in Web3 is literally I have one login. I literally have a wallet, and then I click connect, and then I can connect to 20 different products and 20 different Google Chrome tabs. And it's literally the same thing. I don't have to do anything, it's just super quick and that sort of stuff. That works once you have that wallet, right? But
that's right.
Okay, I'm getting my wallet seed in my ledger, which I've backed up with my 24 words and blah, blah. It sucks. That kind of onboarding experience. If you're a brand new user, it's just not going to be a good thing. So yeah, look, I see value in that that sort of login with Google. I guess the question is then, how can you convert that login with Google to a private key? And then that segues into something which I really like at the moment is the stuff going on with passkeys. So Jordan from the Solana Labs team is working a lot with passkeys, which is, one of the existing, FIDO certified, login methods. Literally, he built an app where it was log in with your Face ID or with your Windows login or something like that. And it generated a private key. I claimed some airdrop coins on DevNet and I sent a transaction. I literally just did that with Face ID on my phone. I didn't have to do anything with an extension. So I think really maybe where we're going is this stuff about extensions and backing up and this sort of wallets. I think a year from now, I think it's going to accelerate really quickly. We're not going to be talking about that, because we're going to have different authentication methods that are going to work with the authentication methods people already have. Maybe it's Google, maybe it's Face ID, something like that. I think that's really what we need to go for user onboarding.
Definitely agree. I do like that quite a bit. I think that, the idea of wallets was very important early on, but there has not been substantial innovation in the wallet experience in the last 6-7 years. And I think you're seeing a lot of it on Solana right now. TipLink is another great example of just trying a different approach, right? I think Icarus and what Jordan's working on is going to possibly reinvent how people conceive of wallets. And then you even have people like Backpack who are trying out new things and putting, what they call it, XNFTs, or basically dApps, directly in the wallet as well to make it a super app of some kind. So yeah, whatever the future looks like, it is definitely not going to be right down your seat phrase. And so I definitely agree there.
It sucks, man. I don't want to deal with extensions anymore. I think it's just a bad user experience. So anything that can solve that's great.
Yeah, I was terrified. I couldn't find my laptop because I'm traveling right now. And my first thought was oh God, all of my crypto is going to get lost forever, right? Which is just an awful experience. So if I can use Face ID and it's backed up to iCloud and any Apple device I can now access, without any fear of losing control of my assets, that's a gigantic win for all of crypto, I think.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you so much for your time today. We're going to do more of these news tidbits, I think. We'll check in when we can. But look, thanks so much for making the time today, Kash. Enjoy the rest of the day out in Bangalore, and I hope you meet some really awesome people building some cool apps. So keep us posted next time we have a chat.
Will do. Thanks for having me on, George. Talk soon.
Awesome. See ya.